I yelled at the old man who hit my car. He handed me his insurance card with a note that made me break down. We've all been there, that sickening crunch of metal meeting metal, the instant surge of anger, the flood of curse words ready to explode. But sometimes, life has a way of teaching us lessons in the most unexpected moments. What started as the worst Tuesday of my life turned into a profound reminder that everyone carries battles we know nothing about. This is the story of how a minor fender bender became a turning point that changed my perspective on patience, compassion, and what really matters when we're tested by life's sudden storms. The perfect storm. It had been one of those days where everything goes wrong from the moment you wake up. I'd spilled coffee on my only clean work shirt, missed an important client call because my alarm didn't go off, and received an email about budget cuts at the office. My stress levels were already maxed out when I rushed to my car after a grueling 10-hour shift, desperate to get home and collapse. The traffic was its usual nightmare, a sea of red brake lights stretching endlessly ahead. I was running on fumes, both literally and figuratively. My gas tank warning light had been on for the past 20 miles, and my patience had evaporated somewhere around mile 10. All I could think about was getting home, ordering takeout, and forgetting this day ever happened. Little did I know, the universe had one more test waiting for me at the next intersection. The collision. The light turned green. Finally, I pressed the gas pedal, already mentally planning my evening. That's when I felt it, a jarring thud from behind that sent my head snapping forward. My car lurched ahead a few feet before I slammed on the brakes. Someone had rear-ended me. The anger was instantaneous and overwhelming. All the frustration from my terrible day found its target. I threw my car into park with more force than necessary, my hands shaking with rage. This was the last thing I needed. Now I'd have to deal with insurance claims, repairs, rental cars, all the bureaucratic nightmares that come with accidents. I jumped out of my car, ready to unleash the storm that had been building all day. The cold evening air hit my face, but it did nothing to cool my temper. I marched toward the other vehicle, my mind racing with angry words. The confrontation. As I approached the other car, I could see the driver slowly opening his door. An elderly man emerged, moving with visible difficulty. He looked to be in his 70s, maybe older, with white hair and weathered hands that gripped the car door for support. But my anger blinded me to any sympathy. I was too consumed by my own problems to register his frailty. "Are you serious right now?" I shouted, my voice carrying across the intersection. Other drivers were watching now, some slowing down to see the confrontation. "Do you even know how to drive? Were you sleeping back there?" The old man's face fell, his eyes showing hurt behind his thick glasses. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. I was on a roll, months of pent-up stress finding its outlet in this unfortunate moment. Every frustration, every disappointment, every setback came pouring out in harsh words directed at this stranger. The silent response. The old man didn't fight back. He didn't raise his voice or make excuses. Instead, he simply reached into his jacket pocket with trembling hands. The movement was slow, deliberate, as if even that small action required significant effort. He pulled out his wallet, carefully extracted his insurance card, and placed it in my hand. But there was something else, a small folded piece of paper tucked behind the card. Before I could process what was happening, he gently closed my fingers around both items. His hands felt paper-thin and cold, yet his grip conveyed something I couldn't quite name at that moment. Kindness, forgiveness, understanding. He looked at me with eyes that seemed to carry a lifetime of wisdom and sorrow. No anger reflected back at me, despite my verbal assault. Just a quiet sadness that should have stopped me in my tracks. "Please read the note," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. The note that changed everything. My hands were still shaking with adrenaline as I unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shaky but legible, written in blue ink that had bled slightly through the thin paper. What I read made my heart drop into my stomach. "I'm sorry about the accident. I just left the hospital where my wife of 52 years passed away an hour ago. I shouldn't be driving, but I needed to get home to call our children. Please forgive an old man who just lost his whole world. Whatever the damage costs, I'll pay it. I wasn't paying attention because I can't stop crying. The words blurred as tears filled my own eyes. The anger evaporated instantly, replaced by crushing guilt and shame. I looked up at him, really looked at him this time, and saw the red, swollen eyes, the trembling lips, the grief etched into every line of his face. This man was drowning in sorrow, and I had just made it worse. A moment of humanity. "I'm so sorry," I choked out, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have. I didn't know." The apologies tumbled out, inadequate and hollow against the magnitude of what he was experiencing. The old man, his name was Robert, I later learned, just shook his head gently. "You couldn't have known," he said, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I should have pulled over. It's not your fault." But it was my fault for responding with such cruelty to another human being. We stood there in the middle of that intersection, two strangers connected by collision and circumstance. Other drivers honked and maneuvered around us, but time seemed suspended. I felt the weight of my harsh words, the shame of my instant judgment, and the profound lesson unfolding before me. Without thinking, I stepped forward and hugged him. He collapsed into the embrace, his thin frame shaking with suppressed sobs. Perspective shift. We moved our cars to a nearby parking lot, neither of us in any condition to drive immediately. Robert told me about Margaret, his wife of 52 years, his high school sweetheart, his everything. They'd been together since they were 17. He showed me a photo from his wallet, a beautiful young couple at their wedding, full of hope and joy. Then another photo, more recent, showing them gray-haired and smiling, still deeply in love after half a century. She'd been sick for months, he explained. The end had come peacefully, but nothing could have prepared him for that final moment when she took her last breath. The world just stopped making sense, he said, staring at the photo. 52 years, and now there's just silence where her voice used to be. I thought about my terrible day, my trivial complaints about coffee stains and work stress. How insignificant they seemed now, how petty my anger had been. The real damage. We examined the cars together. The damage was minor, a cracked taillight on my end, a small dent on his front bumper. Nothing that couldn't be fixed. But the real damage had been done to my conscience, to my understanding of how we treat each other in moments of stress. I told Robert to forget about the insurance claim. "Please, I can't take your money, not today, not after everything," I insisted. He protested weakly, but I could see the relief in his eyes. We exchanged phone numbers, and I promised to check on him in the coming days. As I watched him drive away carefully into the evening traffic, I called my own mother. "Hey, Mom," I said when she answered, my voice still thick with emotion. "I just wanted to tell you I love you. Can we have dinner this weekend?" Life's too short, I'd learned, to let the small stuff make us forget what really matters. The lessons we carry. Sometimes the universe delivers lessons in the most unexpected packages. That fender bender taught me more about humanity, compassion, and perspective than any self-help book ever could. Robert's grace in the face of my cruelty, during his darkest hour, showed me what true strength looks like. It's easy to be kind when everything's going well. The real test comes when life breaks your heart, yet you still choose gentleness over bitterness. I kept my promise to check on Robert. We've become unlikely friends, sharing occasional coffee and conversations. He's teaching me about lasting love, resilience, and finding light after devastating loss. I helped him sort through Margaret's belongings, listened to stories about their life together, and witnessed how grief transforms but doesn't have to destroy. That terrible Tuesday turned out to be a gift disguised as a disaster. Now, when someone cuts me off in traffic or makes a mistake that affects me, I pause and remember Robert's red eyes and trembling hands. I remember that everyone I meet is fighting battles I know nothing about. Maybe they just lost someone they loved. Maybe they received devastating news. Maybe they're holding on by a thread, just trying to make it home. The next time life tests your patience, remember that kindness costs nothing but means everything. Behind every driver, every stranger, every person who makes a mistake, there's a complete human story, filled with love, loss, fear, and hope. We can choose to add to someone's burden with our anger, or we can lighten it with our grace. Robert chose grace on the worst day of his life. That's a choice I'm trying to make every day since. The moral truth: our worst days can become someone else's worst days when we let anger blind us to their humanity. But our worst days can also become turning points, moments when we choose compassion over cruelty, understanding over judgment. The dent in my car was fixed within a week. The dent in my consciousness, the one created by recognizing my capacity for callousness, has been a permanent reminder to lead with empathy. Because one day, it might be you behind that wheel, tears blurring your vision, heart shattered into pieces, needing grace from a stranger who doesn't know your pain.